So, I mean, this is actually, it's a very important subject, given that two things. One, it's the number 2 leading cause of death after heart disease. Two, virtually everybody is directly affected by cancer. And what I mean is, there are cancer cells forming in your body, if not every day, from time to time, on a regular, consistent basis. This is what the experts say. Everybody has cancer cells forming in the body. But only 50% wind up with cancer, with an issue. Okay, why is that?
Some kind of immune system going on?
That's right. What's happening is a healthy body recognizes these rogue cells. Cancer cells are human cells, which aren't healthy cells, and then begin replicating quickly. They're disease cells. And a healthy enough body sees those cells and says, I don't want those. And it gets rid of them, destroys them, okay? When someone winds up with an issue, with cancer, it's because their body wasn't able to do that, okay? So this, I think, really is the heart of the matter, and the part that I want to share with you, impress upon everyone. I mean, I wish everyone could understand this. And that is that, first of all, tumors aren't the problem. They're a symptom. They're just a symptom. So in the 22 plus years that Tanglewood has existed, we have probably had 30 to 40 women with breast cancer, clients, okay? In almost every case, each of these women was someone who had already had breast cancer and already had conventional treatment. It might have been a lumpectomy where they take out the tumor. It might have been a mastectomy where they take the breast. It might have been a radical mastectomy where they take the breast, lymph nodes, in some cases muscle from the front of the body. I mean, this is disfiguring surgery, right? Then there's usually chemotherapy and or radiation that goes with it to kill any cancer that might still be there. And what happens is they do these, 2 or 3 different things, whatever their approach is in each case. And when they're done, hopefully, there's no more sign of a tumor. And so they'll say, you're clean, you're healthy, you're fine. Right? Did that happen to you?
Yes.
They just said, you're fine. And people go back and they live their lives. 3 to 5 years later, most people develop cancer. It comes back. And they're surprised, but I thought it was healthy. They don't understand that what they eliminated was a symptom. The underlying reason that cancer occurred, there are two things that have to come together. One of them is toxicity. Cancer is largely the result of toxicity. Let me demonstrate, okay? What happens when people smoke enough cigarettes? They get lung cancer. Why? Because they're taking toxic particulate matter into their lungs. It should never have been there. Okay? Same thing could happen if you breathe enough smoke or inhale enough coal dust or enough asbestos. Toxic particulate matter in the lungs. This is what happens. How about people who chew tobacco?
Same thing.
Well, it's a little different. They wind up taking this toxic tobacco leaf, putting it in their mouth, right? And they wind up with lip, tongue, gum cancer because they're constantly exposed to these toxins. How about people that drink enough alcohol? Liver cancer or what's it called? Cirrhosis of the liver. Right, they're diseased liver because the liver's exposed to all these toxins. Your liver's job is to break down toxins, to metabolize toxins. It's intended, I mean, our bodies are naturally able to metabolize tiny amounts of alcohol. And we briefly touched on why that's so. Why is that so? Why would we naturally be able to metabolize some alcohol?
Fermented fruit?
Because fruit ferments. Any fruit, given enough time in the right conditions, is going to ferment. And that means we might eat some. Now, if we were meant to eat fermented foods, by the way, you know what? Our livers would be able to process a lot of alcohol. But we're not meant to eat fermented foods. So most of us, as we agreed, I think, you bite into fermented fruit, you spit it out. It just tastes disgusting. Imagine if it tasted good. You'd keep eating ferment. You might even try fermenting fruit on possible. Oh, good. The pineapples are ripe. I'm going to let them wait another week. Then I'll eat them. Long after they were ready to eat, right? So they're fermented. Now the body has to process a lot of alcohol. That's a problem. We can't process a lot of it. We can process a little bit. As soon as we do too much, we're creating an issue, okay? In the U.S., not everyone here is from the U.S. Most of you have probably been to the U.S. The U.S. is a big country. It's about 200 or 300 times bigger than Costa Rica, area-wise. Costa Rica is the size of North Carolina.
Yeah.
And that's one of 50 states, and North Carolina is not one of the biggest states. Pretty big, but not nearly as big as some of them. In any case, in the U.S. you have these long highways, and state troopers sit in their patrol cars, waiting for a car on the horizon. What they used to do is they would sit there with their radar gun in their lap. They don't do that anymore. Anybody want to guess why not?
Cancer.
They developed high rates of testicular cancer because these radar guns are leaking radiation all the time right into their lap. Okay, so now they're told, don't put these, leave it in the holster until you see someone, you pick it up. Don't touch it until you need to. Okay, I don't think I want to sit in the car with one of these things. What do you think? Sounds like a bad idea, right? But this is what's going on. Migrant farm workers in California, Arizona, they come up from Mexico to pick grapes and other things. They're working with foods that have just been sprayed with pesticides. Sometimes it's no longer legal to have them out there while they're spraying, but I'll bet it happens anyway. Okay, and they wind up with high rates of cancer because they're being exposed to poison. Okay, so toxins are a factor. Now, first of all, what do you think about that piece of it? Is that something you need to consider or worry about? I mean, I wouldn't encourage you to spend a lot of time, up at night not sleeping, but understand that we live in a very toxic world where cancer used to be virtually unknown in the natural world. In nature, it's no longer unknown. Animals in nature develop cancer. Why? Because we've polluted the planet. Okay, so some of the most toxic chemicals wind up in the ice in the Arctic. They wind up everywhere. And in one study published a few years ago, in North America, they took a statistically significant sample size, a large enough group of people to have some significance. Okay, because if you study 2 people in a population of 350 million, doesn't mean anything. There has to be enough people for it to have statistical relevance and significance. They have statistically significant sample size. They look for 75 persistent environmental toxins. So persistent environmental toxins are things that wind up in the environment and don't break down very quickly. They last a long time. These were chemicals like polychlorinated biphenyls. Heard of those? PCBs. They were invented to insulate electrical wires, but they're incredibly toxic, and they're illegal in the U.S. Okay, for decades. Okay, dioxin, illegal pesticide, incredibly toxic. I can't remember all the chemical, but long list, 75 very toxic substances, many, if not most of which, have been outlawed decades earlier in North America. What do they find? The average person had more than 50% of these substances in their body in measurable quantity. Bodies are toxic because we live in an increasingly toxic world. Okay? And we're creating that. And this is why, I said yesterday, we may not be able to directly improve the, whatever the issue of the ozone layer, whatever, but we can make better choices.
Yes.
We can take responsibility for our choices, and we can help educate other people. We can be the role model. Okay? We're as green here as we're able to be. I'd love to do better, but in the U.S., everything was organic. Here, it's hard to do. Even like all of our paper, tissue paper, toilet paper, 100% recycled paper. Office paper, it's very hard to find here. We can't get it in most places. We used to use only recycled office products. Here we can't do that so easily. And shipping stuff from the U.S., shipping paper doesn't make a lot of sense. It's incredibly heavy. So it's very expensive to do that. But anyway, so everybody's exposed to toxins. Living in a place like this, A lot less of them, right? I mean, have you noticed we see like 1 or 2 vehicles per hour passing by? That's it.
Yes.
Okay. We've got tons of trees producing oxygen. We've got pure water coming out of the ground. You know, we use no chemical laden materials. The fabrics we use are chemical free. In the US, upholstered furniture, curtains, rugs are all treated with toxic chemicals. They're fire retardant chemicals,
Yes, yeah.
they're stain protecting chemicals, and these chemicals break down in off gas and produce toxins in the air. We don't have them here, and most of our space is open anyway. So the one thing we haven't been able to really source here is our really healthy paints. In the US, for 20 years, I used 0 VOC, volatile organic compound paints. Can't really get those here, okay? But again, because everything's open, it's much less of an issue. You know, in the US, you paint a room, at least half the year, if not more, your windows are closed. Most people, same in the UK, right? The window in Alaska, probably 9 months of the year, the windows are closed. You're breathing those toxic fumes. Here, everything dissipates quickly into the air. All right, so toxicity is an issue. What's the other part of it? I already mentioned, immune function. Okay, cancer becomes an issue where you've got toxicity and poor immune function. That's what happens. Okay, as long as there's enough, you know, if there's enough toxicity, it might override even healthy immune function. If there's normal levels of toxicity and there's healthy enough immune function, one can probably avoid developing cancer. But unfortunately, when most people complete their cancer treatment, no one says to them, by the way, you should detoxify your body, avoid toxins, you know, do whatever you can to boost your, no one ever says that. They just say, you're good, you're healthy, you're all set. And so they're surprised, these people, when they're later diagnosed with cancer again. It's what's going to happen. I don't know if you're aware of this, but cancer treatment is considered successful if you can go 5 years without a recurrence or death. 5 years. Would anyone here consider themselves like successful if they live 5 more years and then died the next day? I don't consider that successful.
No.
We had a client here last session. He was here for the 3rd time. The first 2 times he was here, and he knows this. I mean, he might see this video, but he already knows this about himself. He showed up, and he's heard me say this. He showed up here looking like a cadaver, looking like a dead man. No color in his face. Big dark circles under his eyes. He would stay up all night. I mean, the first time he came here, he was like 27 or 28, a multimillionaire. Very successful in business, but not in anything else. Not in taking care of himself, not in creating a healthy body, right? All of his energy was on making money. That doesn't work very well. Even while he was here. He wrote a book the first year he was here. He wrote a book at night while he was fasting. Like, dude, you should be sleeping. What are you doing? I want to get my book published. So, turned out, he was finally diagnosed with colon cancer at the age of 29, after he'd already fasted twice. And his colon was completely black and had no muscle tone. It was dead tissue. Okay? A lot of problems when you're trying to get your food through dead tissue. So he had his entire colon removed a year ago. And then they found there was still some cancer, lymph nodes or someplace else. Okay? And his oncologist, the cancer doctor, said, you need 5 years of chemotherapy at $60,000 a year in Canada. And he said, what's the 5-year survival rate? And she said, we don't keep those statistics. That's a lie. He did the research. He did the research. Guess what he found out? His chance of survival was 2%. And he said to her, so you want me to pay $300,000 to get chemotherapy for the next 5 years, and then with a 98% chance of being dead by the time I'm done? He said, yeah, I want to go back and fast again. And she actually said to him, you go back to Costa Rica, you'll be dead in 2 weeks. Now, it's now 4 or 5 months later. He's a lot healthier. He fasted 40 days. He's a lot healthier than he was before. Okay? So your body can heal if you give it the chance to. It can detoxify if you give it the chance to. And you boost your immune function by fasting. I mean, fasting does, the two things that fasting is best at are the two things that you need to avoid cancer. Detoxification, boosting immune function. In fact, I had a call, was that last night, I think? Early this morning, with a woman in Dubai who was referred to me by a friend of hers who fasted with me because she had cancer. And she'd already had conventional treatment, all, the same story, and didn't want to go through it again. And it's now been a year, and she's much better off than she was before she fasted. Okay, there's no cancer, her immune function is much better, her body's much less toxic, she feels and functions better, and she's telling everyone that she knows with cancer, call Loren. This is what works, okay? Medicine doesn't work, because it came back. It came back. Another client who had cancer, breast cancer, and she had fasted with me and then developed cancer afterwards. Maybe it was already there, we don't know, but she wasn't making the best choices. And she was diagnosed with cancer. And she contacted me about a year ago and said, look, I've got tumors in my brain and my breast. And they say there's nothing they can do for me. Will fasting help? And I said, I don't know. It can't hurt. I mean, it can only help, but it might be too late. There's no way to know. And unfortunately, it was too late. She wound up dying because there were tumors in her brain that her body would not deal with. Okay, so, not to bum anybody out or scare anybody, but the point is, don't wait until it's dire circumstances. Okay, we were never meant to be irradiated every day by Wi-Fi and microwave signals from cell phone towers and all the pollutants that we're creating in the world and dumping still all over the place. Okay, this is why it's incumbent upon you, if you care about your health, to give your body the chance to detoxify. Okay, and then create an environment for yourself that's as healthy as possible. Okay? And if you don't want to go to the trouble, then in the next week or so I'll talk about the environment we're creating here where you can come live and be part of that. Okay, where we're going to do everything we can to eliminate as much of that problem as possible. Because that's what has the body being healthy. Okay? So understand that it doesn't matter, you could be talking about CBD, cannabis oil, okay? It could be doesn't matter what it is, grapefruit seed extract. No matter what you're thinking of that's going to kill your cancer cells. A couple things you should know. Cancer cells are human cells. Things that kill human cells are poison. Okay? Anyone that says cannabis isn't poisonous, it's not true. It is. Is it better than chemotherapy? Yeah, probably. But that doesn't mean it's not harmful to you. Okay, it definitely is harmful to you. It's just a relative thing. But the most important thing to understand is, if you're in this situation, you deal with tumors with one of these substances or some process like chemotherapy or radiation, you need to understand you're not addressing the underlying issue except making it worse, because these treatments make the body more toxic and they make the immune function worse than it was before. So do that if you need to, but then give your body the chance to actually cleanse and heal. Okay? Health is entirely possible. Okay? It's entirely possible. There's no reason that we can't all live to 125 or even older. Okay? But you have to give your body the chance to cleanse itself, to get rid of the garbage. And you have to do it if you want your health and you want to live, even if it's uncomfortable and doesn't feel good. Okay? I know years ago when I was only giving the lectures twice a week on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, one morning in someone's room they said to me, I'm thinking about breaking my fast. And we talked about it. I said, look, do me a favor, just take 24 hours and think about this, okay? You've come all the way around the world to do this, give it some thought, okay? And that afternoon, it happened to be the same afternoon that we had the lecture. And I said, we had 14 guest beds when we were full. I had 13 other guests. I said, how many of you have thought about breaking your fast? Every single person raised their hand. Everyone thinks about it. Okay? part of emotional maturity is getting to the point where you can weigh what would feel best to me right now with what's actually in my best interest, and then make intelligent choices. I know this isn't the most fun you've ever had, perhaps, okay? I mean, I don't know how you weigh, you get to spend time with me every single day. How lucky are you, okay? But, you know, I tell people, if you wanted to have a good time, you should have gone to Disney World, okay? People don't come here to have fun. Most people come here realizing it might be painful. It might be very unpleasant, but it's going to be worth it because you're letting your body cleanse and heal. You have to get clear about what the outcome is that you're committed to. And then you just do what you need to do, okay? Any questions about anything we've talked about here?
What's the typical rate on cancer?
Success rate with cancer.
I mean, for fasting time.
Yeah. Oh, how long?
Yeah.
It depends on what type of cancer they have and what's going on. So breast cancer is, if it's early stage, you guys familiar with cancer staging?
Mm-hmm.
Stage 1 means it's in the original site. Stage 2 means it's spread to a secondary site. Spread 3 means it's spread to the secondary site plus lymph nodes. And stage 4, and I may not be exactly right, but it's something like this. Stage 4 means it's spread to multiple sites. So the earlier the stage, like early stage breast cancer, most people with 21 days do really well, and longer would be better. But even with 21 days, we'll often see a tumor disappear. And it's interesting because breast cancer is one of the few cancers where you can actually feel the tumor. I don't usually do that. Every once in a while someone asks me if I will, but I wouldn't normally do that without being invited to. But most women that have breast tumors are palpating them themselves every day, and they can feel the change. I remember once we had a woman who had a breast tumor. She'd already had breast cancer. It was this typical story. She was coming back, it had come back, and she didn't want to do the conventional treatment. And one day she came in and said, "My tumor is much smaller today, than yesterday." And I'm thinking, okay, it doesn't, I'm happy for you, but it doesn't. They don't change dramatically from one day to the next. The next day she said, "It's much bigger today." She was crying, and I'm like, "Listen, okay, stop checking it every day. Okay, relax. It's not going to change dramatically from one day to the next. If it feels like it is, there might be something else going on. So just relax. Or check it in a week. Check it once a week." But it's typical. We had, I think it might have been about 6 or 8 months ago. Because I don't know if you remember, there was a girl from Eastern Europe somewhere, I can't remember where she was from, who had a big tumor in one of her breasts, and it nearly disappeared in 21 days. I mean, it went from being this big to being that big. Huge shift. That's typical. Again, longer would typically be even more powerful. Yeah.
Disappointing to hear that you had somebody who came for a fast and then afterwards, unfortunately, she got breast cancer, you said. Yeah.
Well, she may have already been creating that situation for a long time. Her fast might not have been long enough to actually correct the underlying issue. I don't remember how long it was. I don't think it was 21 days, her fast. And I don't think she ever made optimal choices afterward. So, it's important to remind everyone that fasting is just giving your body a chance to reset. Okay? Some people seem to think, well, now that I fasted, I'm good. I can pretty much do anything. No, if you go back and make the same choices, you're going to recreate the same conditions. Okay? You're giving your body the chance to cleanse and heal itself, but if you want to keep it clean and well functioning, you need to keep making excellent choices. The better your choices are, the better your results will be. I'll tell you a sad story. I had a woman from the UK come to me. How many of you have been to the UK? Quite a few of you have not been to the UK. So in the UK, it's a relatively small country. It's an island, and there's still quite a few castles around, most of which, as I understand it, are now federal government property because they were so expensive to maintain that people donated them to the government. And so they're now museums or parks. This woman's family, she was 42 years old. Her family lived in a castle. Okay, they still lived in the family castle. And she was 42 years old and she'd never worked. She got a big fat allowance every month. She didn't have to do anything. And she, like the others, in fact, I met her in London at a university somewhere in London. I spoke in their theater hall with 400 or 500 people. And at the end, she came up to me and said, Loren, she said, I want to come fast with you. I have breast cancer. It came back, a recurrence after being treated 3 years ago. I want to come fast with you. And she booked to come. She wrote to me and said, my family said that if I come fast, they're going to cut me off. And she decided to do it anyway. And a friend of hers lent her the money to pay for, her family had, more money than they could possibly know what to do with. But they refused to give her any money for this or anything if she chose to fast. She comes to fast anyway. We're in our first location. This was years and years ago. We're in our first location. This is our second one up here. And not here, but the one in the picture here in the U.S. This is our fourth permanent location over 22 years. So this would have been 17, 18 years ago. And she fasted. She fasted for 21 days. Or she came to fast for 21 days. It was somewhere in that third week she said, I feel better than I felt for years. Can I keep going? And she fasted for 42 days. She was tiny to begin with and wound up being very skinny, but felt incredible. Spent 9 weeks with us, borrowed the money to do it, went home, and about a year later, no, longer than that, a year and a half, somewhere between 18 months and 24 months later, I was on another lecture tour in the UK. And I was having lunch at the house of a young woman who had interned with me, had been the intern. It was my first intern, actually, when this woman was fasting with me. And the intern knew I was going to be there and invited me to have lunch at her house. The two of them had stayed in touch. They'd met at Tanglewood. One was fasting, the other one was working. And they'd stayed in touch. And so the intern said, she's going to call here to talk with you today. And sure enough, she did. And what she said to me was, she said, listen, I just wanted to thank you for everything you did for me. Ever since I got home, my family has been harassing me to eat normally. She was only eating fruit and salad, and she was healthy. But they wanted her to eat normally, and they were harassing her to make conventional choices. And she said, I'm tired of fighting with them. I'm just going to go back and start eating normally again. And I tried to convince her not to, and I couldn't convince her. She went back to eating normally, and she died within 3 or 4 months. Okay? Every time you put cooked food in your body, there's an immune response. Your body's reacting as if it's been poisoned. If your body is already on that, on the edge, that may be all it takes. Yeah.
When you say normal, is that considered like plant-based, or is it?
Honestly, I don't remember, Nicole, because this was 15, 16 years ago this happened, whether she was eating animal products as well. They probably would have been, more okay if she was eating rice and vegetables and could still sit with them and have a normal meal, and maybe didn't include animals, but I'm not sure. Animal products are going to be more problematic, but even a cooked vegan diet, your body is still reacting to all cooked foods with an immune response.
The road ahead, it twists and turns, and the sun beats down and it burns. But I keep on pushing through, and every step quicker than